the hit that took down Kaizer Chiefs defender. It was an ordinary Wednesday night in Honeydew, Johannesburg. The city was buzzing with the usual rhythm, people commuting, lights glowing, the hum of late traffic. But at a petrol station on 14th Avenue, something far from ordinary was about to unfold. 24-year-old Luc Fleurs, a promising Kaizer Chiefs defender, pulled up in his red VW Golf 8 GDI. The car gleamed under the station's lights, a symbol of success, youth, and dreams still in motion. Luc was calm, perhaps checking his phone or just thinking about his next training session. It was late, and he likely thought he was safe in his hometown. But unknown to him, danger was about to strike fast and without mercy. Police spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Mavila Masando later recounted the moments with chilling clarity. While waiting to be served by the petrol attendant, he said, he was confronted by two armed males. They were in a white BMW 1 Series, a vehicle that would become etched in the details of this tragedy. The men approached quickly. This wasn't a robbery of hesitation, but one of cold calculation. With guns drawn, they pointed a firearm at Luc, forcing him out of his car. He didn't fight back. He didn't resist. But even surrender didn't save him. One of the suspects fired a single shot into his upper body. He collapsed at the scene, his future and life slipping away. One of the attackers then jumped into Luc's car and drove off, his accomplice close behind in the BMW. The entire incident lasted less than a minute. It was violent, abrupt, and devastating. Paramedics rushed Luc to the nearest medical care center, but he was declared dead on arrival. Just like that, one of South Africa's most promising defenders was gone. The motive? A car, a status symbol, a senseless murder that left an entire nation in mourning. Luc Fleurs wasn't just a name on a team sheet. He was a symbol of resilience, determination, and raw talent. Born in Cape Town, he entered the world of football through Ubuntu Cape Town's youth academy at just 13 years old. For years, he trained, sacrificed, and rose through the ranks. At 17, he made his professional debut in the National First Division, a moment many dream of but few achieve. His early performances caught the eyes of scouts, and in 2018, he joined SuperSport United. There, he became a regular on the team, making over 60 appearances and proving himself as a rock-solid defender. His strong presence, standing at 1.82 meters tall, made him an intimidating figure on the field. But off the pitch, teammates described him as humble and soft-spoken, someone who always put in the work without needing the spotlight. In October 2023, his career took another step forward when he signed a 2-year contract with Kaizer Chiefs, one of South Africa's most iconic clubs. For Luc, it was a dream come true, a culmination of years of discipline and focus. Though he had yet to make his debut for the Chiefs, everyone agreed it was only a matter of time. He was also on the national radar, having been called up to the Bafana Bafana squad in both 2021 and 2022. Even though he hadn't yet played a match for the national team, his inclusion alone spoke volumes about his potential. Those who knew him best believed he had only scratched the surface of what he could become. His coaches often said that Luc never stopped learning. He studied the game, watched his performances closely, and constantly worked on his weaknesses. But all of that was cut short in the blink of an eye. One senseless act of violence ended a story that should have spanned decades. South Africa lost more than a footballer. They lost a role model, a future leader, a son of the soil. The morning after the killing, South Africa woke up to headlines that no fan wanted to read. Kaizer Chiefs defender killed in hijacking, they blared. Shock spread like wildfire across social media, sports radio stations, and newsrooms nationwide. Tributes poured in from fans, teammates, and rival clubs alike. Candlelight vigils formed outside Kaizer Chiefs training ground, and fans left flowers and jerseys bearing Luc's name. People were not just mourning a footballer. They were mourning a young man whose life was stolen in cold blood. For many, it was a reminder of the brutal reality of violent crime in the country. Johannesburg, a city of energy and ambition, had claimed yet another victim to lawlessness. The police confirmed they had opened a case of murder and car hijacking, but no arrests had been made. Surveillance footage was being reviewed, and the hunt for the suspects was underway. Yet questions lingered. Why him? Why so brutal? Was this a targeted hit or a crime of opportunity? Friends of Luc said he never made enemies. He was soft-spoken, respectful, and focused entirely on his game. His parents were devastated. His mother, in tears, said, "He left the house with a smile and never came back." For the Kaizer Chiefs, his loss was more than just a gap in defense. It was the loss of a brother. Even the national government responded, with calls for tougher action on violent crime. But words felt hollow in the face of such tragedy. Fans demanded justice, chanting his name during games and sharing his story online. Across South Africa, people asked, how many more Lucs must we lose before something changes? His killer or killers were still out there. Somewhere in the city, someone knew something. And until justice was served, the memory of Luke Fleurs would remain not just in stadiums, but in the hearts of every South African who dreamed big and feared dying young. In the days that followed Luke Fleurs' death, South Africa stood still in disbelief. Sports talk shows turned somber, not discussing tactics or goals, but life, loss, and fear. The news wasn't just about football anymore. It was about the growing sense that no one, not even a rising star, was safe. The South African Football Association released a statement expressing profound sadness and called Luke's death a loss to the entire football family. His Kaizer Chiefs teammates, many of whom had only just begun training alongside him, wore black armbands in their next match. Before kickoff, there was a moment of silence, but the silence felt heavier than usual. It wasn't just symbolic. Some fans cried openly in the stands. Others held banners with messages like "Rest in Power, Luke," and "Gone Too Soon." The grief crossed club lines. Even rival teams posted tributes and held their own moments of remembrance. Social media lit up with videos of Luke's early days at SuperSport United, his big tackles, his celebrations. Thousands commented with heartbreak, shock, and prayers for his family. His name trended for days, not because of a game-winning goal, but because of a bullet. A player who had worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and inspired youth had become another statistic in a country already battling a violent crime wave. Outside his family home in Cape Town, neighbors lit candles and held a community vigil. Journalists interviewed his old coaches, who remembered him as the kid who never missed practice. They all said the same thing: Luke didn't deserve this. His family was left to plan a funeral no parent should have to plan. Instead of celebrating a debut with Kaizer Chiefs, they were choosing a coffin. His mother said Luke had called her just the day before to say he was happy and focused. "I still hear his voice," she whispered in one interview. "It hurts so much." The nation mourned, but the pain was personal for many. Because Luke was more than a player. He was proof that dreams were still possible. And now that dream was buried under the weight of another unsolved murder. Honeydew, the quiet northern suburb of Johannesburg, quickly became the center of media attention. Reporters swarmed the petrol station on 14th Avenue, cameras rolling as officers dusted for prints and questioned witnesses. The site was cordoned off with yellow tape for hours. Locals looked on, some in silence, others voicing their fear. Many said that hijackings in the area had become too common, but Luke's murder pushed things over the edge. "This place used to feel safe," one resident said. "Now, even stars are being gunned down." The community's anger wasn't just about one crime. It was about a pattern. A deep, worsening sense that violence had no boundaries anymore. Even petrol attendants were shaken. One, who asked not to be named, said he was just a few steps away when Luke was shot. "It happened so fast," he recalled. "They didn't even yell, just pointed the gun and then boom." Investigators reviewed CCTV footage from the station, hoping to trace the white BMW 1 Series used in the crime. But days passed without an arrest. That made the public even more uneasy. Rumors spread that the vehicle had been spotted in another neighborhood, but nothing was confirmed. Talk radio stations lit up with angry callers demanding action from law enforcement. Meanwhile, security experts weighed in, warning that violent syndicates were becoming bolder. Some speculated that the attack might have been pre-planned, given the speed and precision. Others said it was likely a random hijacking, just horribly timed. The lack of arrests fed into a narrative South Africans knew too well. Justice was slow, and the killers often walked free. Businesses in the area started closing earlier, and families avoided late-night outings. The murder of Luke Fleurs didn't just take a life. It shattered a sense of safety in a city already on edge. As the sun set over Honeydew, shadows grew longer, not just physically, but emotionally, across every street where fear now lingered. Luke Fleurs was never a flashy player, but he had something rare: discipline, hunger, and humility. At Ubuntu Cape Town's academy, his coaches remembered how he always arrived early and stayed late. He was the type of player who would ask for extra drills, who took notes during video reviews. That mindset carried him into the big leagues with SuperSport United. There, he matured quickly, going head-to-head with some of the country's top strikers. He wasn't afraid of tough matches and never shied away from responsibility. By his second season, he was already seen as a future national team anchor. His call-ups to Bafana Bafana in 2021 and 2022 were milestones, even if he didn't get to play. The mere recognition by national selectors proved that Luke had earned his place among the elite. Coaches praised his positioning, calm under pressure, and ability to read the game like someone far older. Off the pitch, he stayed out of tabloids, focused only on football and family. When Kaizer Chiefs signed him in October 2023, it was meant to be a new chapter, one that would raise his profile even higher. Though he hadn't yet played for the team, training footage showed his determination and drive. Many fans were eager to see him take the field. Pundits believed he could help solidify the Chiefs' defense and possibly spark a turnaround season. But now, instead of debut highlights, there are funeral photographs. Instead of interviews about tactics, there are police statements and unanswered questions. The potential Luke carried was not just for his career, but for what he represented. A young man who rose from local roots, kept his head down, and earned everything the hard way. His story was meant to inspire others. His legacy will still do that, But now it will come with a tragic footnote. One bullet erased decades of dreams. One moment ended a life that was only beginning to truly shine. For Luke Fleur's family, the days following his murder felt like living in a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. His mother, silent in earlier interviews, finally broke down during a memorial service, saying, "He was supposed to protect me, not leave me." Luke had been her firstborn, the rock of their household, the one who sent money home and called every weekend. His younger siblings had looked up to him like a hero, and now they were struggling to understand why someone would take his life. His father, usually stoic, was seen crying openly as he carried his son's framed photo during the church service. The grief was raw, thick in the air, stretching beyond words. Family members traveled from Cape Town to Johannesburg to attend the funeral, filling rows of pews in a packed cathedral. Football officials, club representatives, and former coaches all came to pay respects. His coffin, draped in a Kaizer Chiefs scarf, was carried out to the sound of quiet sobs and gospel hymns. One cousin gave a speech saying, "He made it out of the struggle, only to be taken away by it." The emotional weight in the room was almost unbearable. Photographs of Luke as a boy, smiling in his first pair of soccer boots, were displayed alongside his professional portraits. It reminded everyone of just how far he had come, and how far he still had to go. The family chose to bury him in Cape Town, the city that shaped him. Hundreds lined the streets as his casket passed, many holding candles and posters with his face. "Rest easy, soldier," one sign read. "Justice for Luke," another declared. But justice still hadn't come. His mother later said the worst part wasn't just losing her son. It was knowing the men who did it were still out there, possibly planning their next hit. "I want them to see my pain," she said in a television interview, her voice shaking. "They didn't just kill my son. They killed a future." With national pressure mounting, police promised to step up the investigation. Lieutenant Colonel Mavila Masando told reporters that a special task force had been assigned to the case. Detectives were analyzing surveillance footage, cell phone tower pings, and vehicle tracking data. They urged the public to come forward with any information, no matter how small. Meanwhile, tips trickled in, some useful, others misleading. A white BMW matching the description was found abandoned in a scrapyard 2 days later, burned beyond recognition. Forensic teams were brought in to check for fingerprints, DNA, or any sign of who had been behind the wheel. But progress was slow, and frustration grew. Members of the public questioned why, in a country known for violent crime, even high-profile cases still seemed to go cold. On talk radio, some listeners blamed the government's failure to curb hijacking syndicates. Others believed the hit may have been more than just a random crime, perhaps a case of mistaken identity or targeted robbery. Investigators did not comment on those theories. All they confirmed was that no arrests had been made yet. Kaizer Chiefs offered a 100,000 rands reward for information, leading to the capture of the suspects. The Premier Soccer League echoed the call, saying justice must be served not just for Luke, but for every young athlete lost to crime. Still, weeks passed with no major breakthroughs. People grew restless. Protesters marched to the Honeydew police station demanding answers. "If Luke's case can't get solved, what chance do the rest of us have?" one activist said. Police continued to say they were following all leads, but hope began to wane. Every day the killers remained free felt like another wound. Yet, behind the scenes, one detective remained determined, convinced that a single mistake by the suspects would eventually lead them straight to the truth. Back on the pitch, the loss of Luke Fleurs left a visible hole. At Kaizer Chiefs training ground, players wore his initials on their socks and armbands. Coaches often paused drills to reflect, and moments of silence became a regular part of the weekly routine. Some teammates admitted they struggled to focus, their minds replaying the news from that night over and over. A few even sought therapy, acknowledging that grief wasn't something they could just run off during training. Matches resumed, but something was missing: Luke's energy, his calm, his smile. Commentators continued to bring up his name during broadcasts, especially when discussing the team's defensive struggles. Fans still chanted his name during the 24th minute of every game, his age when he died. Other teams joined in with tributes, showing that this wasn't just about one club. It was about a football family shaken to its core. Ubuntu FC, his first club, hosted a memorial youth tournament in his honor. Young players wore shirts labeled "Play for Luke," reminding everyone of his legacy. Coaches used his story to teach young athletes not only about talent, but about character and discipline. In stadiums across the country, his photo often appeared on screens with the words, "Never forgotten." Broadcasters told his story again and again, not to exploit it, but to inspire change. The South African Football Association began discussing new safety protocols for players traveling at night. But change was slow, and the fear still lingered. Some players began hiring private security or avoiding late-night stops altogether. Luke's death became a symbol, not just of what had been lost, but of what needed to be fixed. His legacy wasn't just on the field anymore. It was in the fight for safer streets, and in every young boy who still dared to dream, despite the danger.